All right, so we are live again. Good day, everyone. Welcome to the Sea Turtle Rescue Alliance. We are live here again today on our Facebook page for another of our Sea Turtle Medical Series talks. I am Lorraine Aplaska from the Large Marine Vertebrates Research Institute, Philippines, and I will be your host in today's session. Right now, it's 1 p.m. in the Philippines, where I am talking to you from. So probably let's just wait for a few more minutes and wait for more people to come in online. But yeah, today is going to be so interesting. We are having Dr. Dian Kusuma from Indonesia. Dr. Dian, she will be talking about marine megafauna stranding cases in Indonesia, specifically about the challenges and lessons learned from a veterinarian perspective. So if you guys are online, I hope you can join the conversation. We will be monitoring the Facebook page for questions, and she will be answering your questions live after her presentation. So if you guys can join us, just please comment, type in your questions, if any, and at any time during the talks, and she will address them when live during this session. Okay, so probably let me introduce first Miss Dr. Dian. So Dr. Dian is a veterinarian with a special interest in sea turtle medical conservation. She took a master's degree in marine species pathology at the University of Queensland and has been conducting several research, including blood parasites in green turtles. Because of her capability, Dian is assigned as the chief of I Am Flying Vet, an association under the Indonesian Veterinary Medical Association. So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Dian for her talk.
Thank you, Lorraine, for the introduction. All right, should I just share my screen? Yeah, can I?
Yes, please share your screen.
Okay, that's great. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes, you can see it now. It's now great. On full screen.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so thank you, Lorraine, and also Ale for the invitation. So in this session, I will be talking about the marine megafauna stranding cases in Indonesia. So in particular, I will be talking about the challenges and the lesson learned from the veterinarian perspective. So before that, I would like to give you a little insight on how veterinarian finally earned a position in this collaborative efforts to be one of the many stakeholders that are, in this collaborative effort to manage the stranding events in Indonesia. So before, the stranded cases in Indonesia was poorly reported. So then this thing right here then initiates the formation of national stranding networks among community and stakeholders. That is back in 2012, I guess. But that time, this network only limited to marine mammals. We do have a sea turtle experts group in Indonesia, but very few veterinarians joined that group. And then based on this formation of the stranding network, the people who are in this network then train other people to be the first responders, and then the trainee of the first training became trainers if they have passed the evaluation. So the people who joined this community, this network, usually they came from the government officials, and some of them also marine biologists and very few veterinarians. And then as the time goes by, as these efforts take place in all over the country, reports on the stranding cases slowly increase. And but still the handling of the stranded animals still limited on the live stranding with the priority to refloat or to return them to the ocean. And then if they found in a dead condition, they are just being buried or synced. And very few medical action was taken to help this animal. If they found sick, then only they only contact the veterinarian that they knew. But the problem is Indonesian is very huge country, a huge archipelago, and sometimes in the area where the stranding cases occur, we have no veterinarians who can do the medical practice to help the animal. And then basically that is why the initiative of Flying Vet was finally bring up to a discussion. So in 2017, I remember some of my senior came to me and talked if there's a possibility of making, you know, a volunteer group of veterinarian who are willing to be sent out to other place if there's a stranding cases and do everything that is needed to help the animal. And then I said that it could be possible, and then we slowly made our progress and talked to the president of Indonesian Veterinary Medical Association, because we have this problem, you know, like if we want to do a medical practice in one area, then we need to have a license. But the thing is, with this stranding problem, this stranding can happen anywhere in the country. So it's almost impossible for us to take or to make a license or to process a license in every single place we are going to in order to help this stranded animal. It's just not going to be practical. So we talked to the president and he said, well, there's a way that you can help the animal without making a license or without taking too long a process before we are able to help the animal. Because this is a special occurrence, this is a special condition. So then the president suggested us to make a non-territorial organization. So it's basically an organization that can do a practical medical practice anywhere in the country in order to help the animal that is stranded without a special license. Well, you still need a license as a veterinarian, but it's just a practice license. You don't really need it to help this animal because it's an emergency condition. And then in 2018, I think it was late March, the Flying Vet was finally formed. And there were, I think, 20 people who finally joined this movement, if I can say it's a movement. So Flying Vet actually, the complete name of Flying Vet is I Am Flying Vet, which stands for Indonesian Aquatic Megafauna Veterinary Medical Associations. And we just name it Flying Vet because we basically fly from one place to another to help the animal. So Flying Vet is basically an association that was initiated to accommodate the veterinarians throughout Indonesia with the same interest and have willingness to dedicate their expertise, their time, their knowledge to preserve the marine ecosystem through handling the stranded and or the sick aquatic megafauna in a live or dead condition that occurs throughout Indonesia. So we do have some backgrounds that also, help us to finally strengthen our willing to make this organization to be realized. And the first one is that there was still very few veterinarians who want to be involved in this field. This is because we know that the topic of, let's say, sea turtle and then marine mammals are not very familiar compared to domestic, compared to livestock and such. So veterinarians tend to be doubtful when they are, about to help this animal if they see it stranded because they think that they know nothing about this animal. So we want Flying Vet finally, act as a place where people can start learning and sharing each other about this knowledge right here. And then regardless of these stranding events, and then regardless of how many species that we house in Indonesia, there was still very few scientific publications that are published regarding this animal. So we think that with this, with more people are, being trained, and then more people are being, joining this organization, we really expect that there will be more scientific publication made so that people, other people will know what is actually happening in Indonesia, and we also can learn a lot from what has been published or what has been found in the field. And then we knew that the zoonotic potential can be spread from the dead animal in the ocean to the coastal community. And I think it's the role of veterinarian who needs to disseminate this information to our community. And then in some cases, the cause of the stranding are not known in Indonesia. So I think at least veterinarian can find out some factors that that they can see or that they can found that leads the animal to be stranded or died. And then lastly, it's basically an effort from us in order to achieve the one world, one health in this field, to support this movement. And so far, we have some priority species. So we work with marine mammals, such as whales, dolphins, dugongs, and porpoises, and then also elasmo branch, but not really much. And then we also work with sea turtle, mostly. So in the upcoming slides, there are some cases that that we actually able to handled. So this one case was about 52 pilot whales that were stranded in Madura back in 2021. And then we also did some necropsies on dolphins, whales, and then also we do some health monitoring or health checkup on the stranded sea turtles that usually being found throughout the beach of Bali Island. And then this is Dr. Yus. So sometimes if we found lethargic, so we did some tests like blood tests, and then we did some x-rays to see if there's any fractures or if there's any, let's say, abnormalities in the lungs, something like that. And we also see a lot of Fibro Papillomatous cases in Indonesia. And sometimes we handled some smuggling cases. So this one was taken, I think, back in 2020 when 148 turtles was smuggled in around Natuna waters. And there was a Dr. Dio who take care of all of the turtles. And finally, he helped the government officials to release all the sea turtles back to the ocean. And then we also did some training. So the training that I mentioned before, there were some first responder training. So it's basically how to do the ABCs of the stranding events if you happen to see it in a beach, let's say something like that. And then we also did some talk series like what we are doing right now with some members, and then talk about what cases that we usually found, and then how to do the treatment of those cases. And then if we do have the budget, we could do a more fancy training like this one. We did the DNA barcoding and genetic and data analysis with one of the experts that we have in Indonesia. So all of the training were usually made up as a free training, because we realized that this voluntary movement, we cannot just, we want to ease everyone who have voluntarily joined this organization to be really accommodated with the sources that we have. So we usually propose some grants and then do some free training for all the voluntary vet that we have in Flying Vet. And then we also have like an MOU with the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries. So for information, we work a lot under the supervision of the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries, as well as with the WWF. So those two parties really support us since the first day Flying Vet was formed. So this MOU basically tells us that Flying Vet and the government will help each other in a way that the government will help us with the capacity building of the vet, and then Flying Vet will help the government to manage or to treat the animal if it's needed. And then talking about the past issues and challenges in managing the stranded animal, I can point out three big points, three big perspectives. So first of all, the management. So these challenges that in management usually happen in the past when the government, when people have no idea that veterinarian can take an important part in, keeping the animal alive, making the animal survive from whatever they found in the ocean before they finally stranded. So before, we often found a potential conflict of interest between the government agency of different department. So let's say, for example, because we were supervised by the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries, the other ministry tend to have very little knowledge about veterinarian who are helping them in managing the animal, and sometimes they just don't allow people to, touch the animal that are stranded. In fact, we do have some permission from the MMAF, but sometimes it's just not allowed by the other government agencies. So it happens a lot. And then the system that we have in Indonesia is somehow still rigid. So that sometimes really limit the disease investigation. So let's say we cannot, if for the animals, we cannot just take the sample and then evaluate it in the lab, but we need some kind of permission. We have to collect the permission to take the sample. We have to collect the permission to even carry the formalin in our bag, something like that. So it's quite rigid. And then sometimes that's why the government officials just want to bury the animal and not to investigate the death that we see from that animal. So postmortem investigation is still very few that has been done in Indonesia. And then we have a factor that is, I can say this, it's just inseparable from humans. So we have a wildlife human relationship that is quite complicated in Indonesia. It's sometimes slowing down the process. Like, for example, we want to handle a huge sperm whale, let's say, and in order to keep the sperm whale, the stranded sperm whale, in order to keep it like in a good condition, we need to tell people to not get closer, while people are really amused with these stranding events, because sometimes they just get the top of the sperm whale and just slide on it. It's just chaotic sometimes. So we have that type of condition that occur a lot in Indonesia. And then even the government cannot tell the people to go away from the animal that is stranded. So sometimes it's really complicated. And then about the geographical perspective, it's really difficult for us and for the people in the whale stranding network to really record the stranding cases that occur throughout the archipelago, because we have 17,000 islands. It's not an easy task to record, to even report all the stranding cases that occur in every single island. So that's one big difficulties that we still face. And then because Indonesia is also an archipelago, we need to fly from one place to get to the other place. Sometimes we need to go to, let's say, 2 small cities before we get to a bigger city. So sometimes it's just delay the sample or the animal transport to a lab or rehab facilities. And talking about the resources, I think there are still lack of awareness regarding the marine endangered species, like their biology, their health, and then their the zoonotic potential. So it's kind of it's not hard, but it's really challenging for us veterinarian to. At the same time, we need to save the animal, but we also need to educate people. Please do not stay too close with the animal. They need space to move, or do not touch the animal too much. Do not carry the sea turtle that way because it just can break the flipper or something like that. So people are not really acknowledge how to handle or how to deal with the stranded animals. And then I think for now, as the flying hat has currently have, I think we have about 50, 60 member, but I think that is still too little that to take care of this huge country that, I mean, the stranding event can happen anywhere. And we only have like 60 people who are willing to go down there. But luckily we now, as time goes by, the government official also help us at least to do the ABCs before finally we go down there and help them with the advanced treatment for the stranded animals. And then talking about the resources, we also have these challenges. It is to carry medical supplies from one island to another island. And sometimes if the medical action is needed urgently, then we sometimes have no time to prepare stuff, and that kind of make us, to bring everything that we have that is usually um, less than we need in that place. And sometimes we want to seek other medical supplies in that small area, and it's not really easy to get stuff like syringe, gauze, or probably like tube to keep the blood, something like that. It's very scarce for us. It's very scarce in Indonesia to get the medical supplies. So that is some big points of the challenges and issues that we usually face in Indonesia. And I will tell more in some few pictures. Talking about some cases, this is also one of the challenges that we see. So we saw a lot of boats, sea turtle that was stranded because of boat strikes. Sometimes it just hit right in the head, right in the lung. And then before we get to give the first treatment or first aid, the turtle died on the way to the lab facilities, because it's just, you cannot just travel from one island to another island within minutes. It should take times, and that's just slowing down all the process, and it just affected to the animal's health. Sometimes it is deteriorating, and worse, it may die on its way to the lab facilities. And then we also see, as I said before, as one of the challenges, some government agencies, they tend to not having any agreement in terms of managing the marine endangered animals. So I think this is because marine endangered animals is actually below the management of Department of Forestry and the Ministry of Marine Fisheries, Marine Affairs and Fisheries. So sometimes in one area when you see a dead sea turtle, then you want to look out for other factors that you can evaluate. For example, you want to take care, you want to assess the water quality, because in this case, there were 21 sea turtles that was stranded in an area called Paloh. And then Dr. Reed did some necropsy on the turtles, and she found out a material. It was like semi-solid material. It was black in color, and it was just like a clump of that material through it. She found it throughout the esophagus to the stomach, and she took out that material and evaluated in the lab. It seems like it was a material that came from an oil drilling. So that part is then becoming the highlight. So she cannot release the report because that could be a problem, because the Department of Natural Resources and Forestry is responsible for that area. So she cannot just release the result of the necropsy, and she needs to keep it until now. So that is one case that that may give you an idea of the challenges that we usually face. And then this is actually the same cases that we usually see in Bali. So this poor turtle found, I think they were found mating before then, accidentally struck by a boat, and the two of them finally brought to a head facility. One of them died on its way, and then one of them had its left flipper being amputated by the doctor. And then on the right picture, I think this one, Dr. Dwi saved it. I think she rescued it from a beach in Kalimantan. So it was a very huge wound on the carapace, and I think it's just huge wound that also penetrated to the lung. It only survived for 5 days before finally died. And then we also see a lot of Fibro Papillomatous cases. I think this picture was taken by one of the colleagues in WWF. So this turtle was found in I think it was East Nusa Tenggara waters, and they were trying, because they thought that this tumor may exhibit, a burden to this sea turtle. So they thought to bring it to a health facility in Bali, but it wasn't possible because they cannot take the sea turtle easily, and plus it's really hard to bring a sea turtle from one island to another island, especially when it's really distant. And I think if you want to, the video is not showing. If you want to see the video, see, this is a video of a sea turtle that was rescued in Bali. And this sea turtle swallowed about almost 1 or 2 kilograms of plastic bag. And it's Dr. Dwi and Dr. Yu successfully treated this this turtle, and it's finally defecated all the plastic bag and finally released to the ocean. And I think, well, I do have some pictures, but I think we won't have enough time to show all the pictures. And currently we have an office that is being lent to us by Dr. Yus in Bali. And then in that office, we also have a rehabilitation pool, and it currently houses 2 huge green turtles that are going to be assessed and evaluated for a artificial flipper. So they were all amputated, so we want to make an artificial flipper for them. It's currently on progress. And I think it's not too big to dream about this, but we do have a mission to establish or to make a floating rehabilitation center. And Dr. Dwi has gone to some places, and I think the candidate location is in Tanjung Benoa. You want to make some kind of floating mini hospital just to house the animal that are stranded or that really need a rehabilitation and treatment, medical treatment, something like that. So the concept is just as shown as in the picture, and hopefully it can be made into reality in I don't know, 3 or 5 years from now, hopefully. And probably, probably that is all for me. If you do have some question, and you can just type it, I don't know, how do you say your question, or you just raise your hand or whatever. I can try to answer if I have the answer. Anyway, that's it, Lorraine. Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Yan. Thank you so much for that talk.
Sure.
Actually, we are only 30 minutes in. So if you want to show us more cases, more photos, please feel free to do so.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot, you've shown us already a few interesting stranding cases and photos, and these are very interesting for us. So if you have more, we can have a few more minutes for this before we go into the questions.
Sure. Well, actually, I think we have. Well, I do have some pictures, but they are since they are not my pictures. They are the other doctor's pictures. So Dr. Dewey has so many pictures about the um huge Fibro Papilloma cases that she found in Maluku, and then Dr. Hughes also have some pictures, but I did not include it in my PowerPoint. I may need to seek permission from them. But anyway, we have a lot of cases, most of them fibro papillomatosis, and then the others are just like open wound from the boat strikes. And then very few cases of infectious cases, I guess, at the moment. Let me just try to find out some cases. Because we rarely have the we rarely have the opportunity to conduct a medical or diagnostic stuff to this animal. We need to go through some government agencies to get the permission so that we can check the sample or we can do the postmortem. So not really much cases. It's just like um, lethargic animals that were smuggled. And then we do have some, I think we have gastritis on a baby dugong. Let's see if I have the picture right here. Like in the meantime, if someone is having a question, I think you can let me know.
Okay, thank you for that. So actually, I found this very interesting. Most of the challenges
Mm-hmm.
and limitations that you've mentioned are very, very familiar. So we also do respond to stranding cases here in the
Mm-hmm.
Philippines, and we also encounter these challenges like um, with the logistics, with the
Sure.
permissions. Sometimes you have to deal with the crowds and with
Mm-hmm.
the government at the same time. So it's a common problem. I'm not sure if that's a
Sure.
good thing that we have the same problems, but we can relate.
So yeah, I can probably show you this very interesting cases that we found in, I think back in 2019. Yeah, it was in 2019. So there was a case of stranded baby dugong that it was orphaned. So she, I don't know, this baby dugong lost his mother due to some reason and was stranded in a resort in Papua. So you may know Papua is located very far away from Bali. We need to take 2 flights before we get there, and then 1 hour boat trip to get to this island where the baby dugong was stranded. And then at that time, the baby dugong was kept by the resort management. Before, it was taken care of by the community. So the baby dugong, who has not been weaned, was given rices and then fried banana and then all those odd stuff. So finally, the baby dugong died after 10 days of treatment. And then we found out there was there was an enlargement of the cecum of this baby dugong. And I think, um, yeah, all the lymph nodes were enlarged in the mesentericum. So I think there is, um, lack of knowledge, lack of awareness, and people at one side wanted to help the baby dugong by feeding it, but at the same time it also jeopardized the health of the baby dugong. So in this case, we found that the cecum was very enlarged and it was inflamed, and in some part the small intestine is also inflamed. But really, we do not find anything. We do not find anything specific with this baby dugong, just a sign of probably colitis, or yeah, it's just inflammation in the small intestine and the cecum. So it's I know that this case of the bijugong is still very challenging for all of us to take care of, because it's really prone to stress. So what we usually do, what the veterinarian usually do when they see a baby dugong, is they try to feed it with a formula milk for like every 3 hours, and then they need to do it for at least 1.5 years before it can completely be weaned. So it's really sad that this baby dugong died of something that should be prevented. So yeah, and I think it's this baby dugong is because it's very inseparable from the mother. I think there's a stress factor beside of this funding. So it's still one interesting case for us. And before it died, I think there was one government official came to this resort and tried to release the baby dugong that was being fed by the management, and the management tried to bring it back to the pool, and it happened for like twice, and then probably it's just exacerbate the stress, and it finally died. That is one interesting case. I believe my other friend have more cases, but I just don't have time to compile all the photos. Let me just see if we have more photos.
Thank you for sharing that. I think for those who are interested to see more photos, they can go to the Facebook page of I Am Flying Vet.
Sure, yeah.
I believe there are more photos posted there. So if you don't mind, maybe we'll go through some questions briefly.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so thank you. So you've been sharing a lot of you've been sharing some cases, some causes of stranding. Do you have any? Do you guys know what the most common cause of death or stranding are? And are there places or sites that have higher and incidents of stranding than others?
Okay, so first of all, with the causes, with sea turtles, they usually stranded in a lethargic condition. Some of them have wounds, some of them have fibromatosis, but I think it's usually due to chronic problem, because they are a slow swimmer, so sometimes they get hit easily with by the boat strike, and that just caused them to strand. And then some of the sea turtle that we found, they just be floating on the ocean. I think it has chronic problem. Some blood tests that we did on the sea turtle showed non-specific infection, I guess, and that's all that we know. We didn't find anything, and we just do anything that as a symptomatic treatment. We give some antibiotics. We hand feed this sea turtle before they can finally find food by themselves, and that is with sea turtles. With dugongs, because we only have the opportunity to work with baby dugongs, I think most of the time they strand because they were separated from their mom, so they cannot live without their mom, so they just strand and look for a figure that looks like its mom. So that's why they strand a lot. And they usually being separated from the mom because probably they were like heavy traffic on the area. More people are going to that area for fisheries activities, something like that. And with other species, there were not really, there was no really particular reason, because sometimes we just see like finding that is really different to another, but sometimes we do see infectious causes, I guess, in some dolphins, but it's just happened in once or two, not really much. But usually if they are stranded in a mass condition, like sometimes it is due to huge traffic, or it is due to I think activity on that area that is packed with people, something like that. We rarely see stranded cases that are caused by algae bloom, if I'm not sure. Yeah, we have never seen that. There's probably one, but since Indonesia is a huge country and we did not do any all the investigation on all the cases that we see, so those are the causes that that we currently knew. Probably plastic, but I believe that plastic is just like incidental finding in the animal, because they can easily eat plastic, especially sea turtles. They can just mistaken plastic for jellyfish. And what was your second question?
The second question was, are there areas that are more likely to have these stranding?
Okay, so I think again, the people in the whale stranding collected the data based on a report, so I cannot say that that is the real number, but based on that report, the hotspot for strandings are Bali, and then Papua, and then in the far west, Aceh, and then I think in East Nusa Tenggara. Those are where the reports of stranding mostly come.
Okay, I see. And these are citizen reports, no? From communities that are based there in those areas.
Yes, from the first responders. So for your information, the whale stranding in Indonesia that has been formed since 2012, I think they have done a really great job in training people, coastal people, to report the cases, and then to how to carry the first aid for this animal, you know, like acting like the a proper responder. I mean, like the training really help a lot in for the animal that is stranded in some remote area. So I think there are currently thousands of people that have been trained by them. So they usually get the report from that people, from the community that has been trained, and also from social media. Sometimes they just you know, post a picture and then bring it to the network, and people start to respond to the picture and do everything that is needed to save the animal.
Interesting. You mentioned also Fibro Papillomatous earlier, as one of the stranding causes that you see on turtles. How often do you see this? And do you have a specific protocol on treating them? Because we know that they're highly infectious. Or how do you treat them?
Well, as far as I can remember, it was actually Dr. Yus was the only one who, oh no, Dr. Yus and then Dr. Dewey lately, she managed to remove the tumor from the sea turtle that has a huge Fibro Papillomatous on the neck. So we usually treat the animal that really needs it. I mean, like if it's not really disturbing, then we just leave it like that, because sometimes it just fell off. And then if it's not, then if it's like getting the way they move, or it's just disturbing their eyes, then we need to do the surgery. So Dr. Yus, I think he did it on his clinic. So I think it's just a normal procedure for surgery. He did not use laser, so just use scalpel and take all of the messes, and then just take rehabilitate the sea turtle for a couple of days before it's being released. And then on the other side, I think Dr. Dewey has the experience to do the removal of these huge masses on the neck. I really wish I had the picture with me, but I think it's on our Facebook. I think she has posted it. It was a huge lump. Let me just try to. And yeah, sometimes the cases, you know, the cases happen in the area where there is no facilities. So really, our people try to treat it with everything that we have. Like if we only have the scalpel, if we only have the scissors, then we try to do it as best as we can with the equipment that we have. But with the Fibro Papillomatous is quite, I think it's quite frequent, but we don't really treat the, the tumor that is still like small, because we have the urgency to release the animal before it's being brought with other parties for, I don't know, for whatever reason. So the urgency is to release them, but if we have the permission, and if the condition of the animal is urgent, like it's getting getting on the side of this animal and it cannot move due to this tumor, then we will do the surgery with the facilities that we have, with the all equipment we have. But if not, then we just try to release it as fast as soon as possible, because that is our priority.
Okay, I see. You're also mentioning about facilities. So I'm just curious to know how many or how big is the network of facilities in Indonesia? How I'm asking this because you mentioned that you have to fly vets all around the country to respond to the animal, and then when you get there, you still have to transport the animal to a facility to be able to treat it properly. So it's you kind of lose a lot of time with traveling. So I was wondering how how difficult is that?
So exactly, that happens a lot. So we have, talking about the medical facilities, if we talk about clinic, then we don't have we only have few options. I can tell we only have two options that appears on my mind. So actually, we have one in Bali, that is the clinic that is provide to us thanks to Dr. Yus. He's the owner of the clinic, and we usually bring all the sick animal that is stranded around Bali area to his clinic. And then one we have in Pontianak, and the owner of that clinic is actually Dr. Dwi. So everything, this facility came from us. It's voluntarily, and we almost use everything that we have to treat this animal. And that is with the rehab facilities. With the lab facilities, if we want to take the sample, and we usually send it to a government lab. So there's a veterinarian that is managed by the Department of Agriculture, and we usually bring it to that lab. So there's one in Bali, there's one in Pontianak. It's actually a lot, but we want to keep the sample. I do not want, I live in Bali, and I do not want to send, it's not possible for me to send the sample out of from Bali, because it's just complicate things. So there's a couple of lab that we usually send a sample to. I think 3 or 5 we have labs to send a sample to. But the stranding can happen anywhere, so it takes time. It takes time to transport everything. Oh, okay.
Okay, so I'm just sharing here the photo of Dr. Dwi.
Yes, exactly.
You mentioned earlier.
I think this one happened like a few months ago, and she was by herself in a remote area with no signal. It was also her first time to do the surgery by herself with no assistant. So it was a really difficult task for her, but she managed to remove all the masses on the flipper on the neck.
There's a very massive tumor.
Yeah, and it's bleeding.
Oh,
it's bleeding. Yeah, it's bleeding a lot. Yeah,
okay.
I really wish we can invite Dr. Dwi in this talk, because she can tell a lot of cases, because she worked for WWF, and she traveled a lot across the country. So she sometimes sees stranded animals and happen to take care of the stranded animals, while I just stay in Bali and just wait for whatever cases that happen in Bali.
That's okay. Bali is your area, your specialty.
Yeah. Before I tend to travel a lot, but now I'm not that mobile due to some reason.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's been so difficult to travel these days. And even if you are able, people are still anxious about it.
Sure.
I
Yeah,
can, yeah.
exactly. And then the thing is with this flying vet, as I said before, this is a voluntary movement. So everything that we did on the field usually come from our pocket. So if you want to treat the animal, sometimes you need to buy your own ticket, and then you need to buy all the stuff like this. Let's say if you need a medical supplies, you need to buy it with your own money before, the government can finally help you with the grant. So it's a bit of issues in that part.
Yeah, yes, I can imagine. So before we wrap up, we have just one last question. So Dr. Dian, you are a very great example and inspiration for young early career vets from Southeast Asia. Would you like to tell us more about about your path? Where did you learn about the skills that you have right now? And do you have any advice for young Indonesian vet students who wants to get involved as well with in this career path and also with I am flying vet?
So I think all the doctors and flying vets, they're all amazing people, because we knew that sea turtles, marine mammals, and whales and stuff, dugong, we know nothing about them. No one teach us while we were on the college seat. So everything comes from ourselves. So we just train ourselves. We learn by ourselves. If someone has more knowledge than us, we ask them to share. And so far, we grew up in a community of students called a Turtle God. That's why we grew up from. Dr. Dewey was my senior in that community. And that very one community was actually a special community of students who have interest on sea turtle. Then it it slowly grows into a bigger interest that not only sea turtle, I think I like dugong. And then we start to realize that probably we need to learn about dugong, but everything you must achieve it by yourself. And because this very I think it's very rare, because not all veterinarian wants to learn about this, because it's still unfamiliar. And if you tell people in Indonesia what area of veterinary are you studying, if I said marine mammal or sea turtle, then people will just like, oh, can you get money from that? That's why people are not really interested in this field. But um, in reality, we need more veterinarian to work in this field, and that just one big motivation for me, because we Indonesia is a huge country, and it's just too much to take care of. It's 60 people will not be enough to take care of all the animals in this country, and it's just motivates me more. And then I got the opportunity to study abroad and back in 2016, and that's when I learned more about pathology, particularly in diagnostic pathology. So I get to see a lot of people who work with sea turtle. I saw Paul Mills, and then I saw some great pathologists also in that university. So everything actually comes from yourself and someone. If you want to get to this point, then you need to link yourself with someone who have the same interests. And Indonesia, as I said before, I have said it to all of my juniors, all the students I see, that the animals are not only domestic dogs and cats and livestock, but we have a lot of animals that we need to take care of. And we are needing more and more people to do voluntary work on this, even though it's voluntary, because if it's not started with voluntary, how can the efforts to increase the or to improve the health of the marine animal can be achieved? So I guess well, you need to realize that Indonesia really needs more veterinarian to work on the ocean, to work for the ocean, because no one wants to join it easily. I think it should be a great motivation for all the young veterinarian, that even though you are a veterinarian who take care of dog and cat, but at least do something for the other animal around you, like sea turtle. They are almost they're almost they are endangered, and I think someone has to do this before we expect everyone else to do the same thing. So I think we just need to give a good example.
All right. Yes, super agree. Thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, it's so fascinating that we live in a country that's surrounded by water, and you would
No one
expect
knows.
that people
We are surrounded by waters.
Yeah.
We do not want to do anything for the waters. In fact,
Yes.
the water is the source of all the living. Well, I don't know. Probably
Yes.
different people have different thoughts. So you just need to poke them. Hey, look around. You go to the beach, but you don't contribute for the beach. That's a bit selfish. But it takes time for people to start to, to be aware of this.
Yes, it does take time.
Yes,
You would think that people would be more interested to learn about the water that is surrounding them, but
I think so.
sometimes people are more afraid about it,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah.
also is a fascinating perspective.
Yeah,
So
I thought that this is very challenging, especially when you talk about whales. The first thing that came up to my mind is a huge animals that cannot be touched. And it's just completely misleading thought. But sometimes, yeah, as you said before, it takes time for people to start to recognizing that the ocean seek for help, seek for doctors, not only things in the terrestrial, like the ocean also needs doctors. So people need start to be an ocean doctor.
yes, that is so true. People also we are surrounded by the ocean, so we need to be able to care about it more,
Mhm.
especially that we are very interconnected with it.
Yes.
So yeah, you also mentioned before that it's so difficult if you want to get to pursue this particular career, you want to study about marine
Yourself,
mammals, about
all by
whales,
yourself.
yes, all by yourself. So this is one of the it's very yes. This is one of the things that we want to address here in the Sea Turtle Rescue Alliance. We want information about these things to be more accessible to people who want to learn, especially the young people. So we really, really appreciate you sharing your experience and your knowledge in this platform. And I hope that we could help you reach out to more people and inspire more young people to follow your path, especially where you are in Bali. I hope the
Yeah.
young vets start to reach out and then be a little bit more curious and interested in the waters that's surrounding them.
Yeah, well, actually, if anyone has have more question, they can just pop a message to the Instagram. We have a really great admin here. Retno is here. She usually the one who connects us all with the vet or with some other people who have interest on our activity. So yes, just pop out a question or anything you want to say to our Instagram or Facebook page or email, then we will try to reply it right away.
Okay, so if anyone wants to contact, if anyone has a question related to being a veterinarian for the marine mammals and for sea turtles, then you could just send a message to I am Flying Vet either on their Facebook or Instagram page.
Yeah.
So
Right.
yes. Right. So that's it for today. Thank you so much again for being with us again, for being with us
Thank
here
you
today,
for
for
the
sharing your
invitation.
yes. Yes. Hopefully we could see each other in person in the future. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.